It's a beautiful Monday morning here in Lagos. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the program. I am Nifemi Ogunto. It's obvious we have changed house, right? Brand new studio right here in the heart of Lagos. We're paying attention this morning as we enter into the new year. Nigerians have huge expectations of this government. They are also anticipating that perhaps this year we'll begin to see the implementation, or let's call it the fruits of the very difficult policies, decisions that Mr. President made in his first day in office. We've had quite a number of times from him. Following his media chat, he also had a release done on the first day of the year where he was saying, well, you know what, remove the full subsidy, and also quite a number of other policy decisions were important, and it was needed at the time it was done. 18 months into his administration, is optimistic that in the new year, Nigerians will begin to see the positive impact of all of these policy decisions. Let's talk about expectations into the new year. I'm joined by Honorable Segun Olulade, who is Executive Director, Customer Centricity and Marketing, and a former member of the Lagos State House of Assembly. Happy New Year, Honorable.
Happy New Year.
Glad to have you.
You too.
The first time we're hosting the show in Eco Atlantic, it's historic that you're our first guest.
Yes, and I'm glad to be the first guest on this morning.
Indeed.
On your new station. Anybody that comes there, we know it is wow.
Absolutely.
This is how it should be. I got lost thinking that I'm no more in Lagos or in Nigeria. I thought I'm in US, maybe it's on CNN or Al Jazeera or whatever. So, I mean, this is fantastic.
And
congratulations to the management of TVC and the staff of TVC.
Thank you. We are poised to serve our viewers better this new year. Let us begin with the experiences of the previous year. We saw inflation skyrocket to about 30%. Nigerians, quite a number of them, have to now exchange commodities in the market for higher amount of money. And Mr. President did acknowledge that when he was addressing the nation late last year. What's your opinion about how that year went for Nigeria and how government was able to perform?
Well, no doubt that year, 2024, was a very difficult year for so many Nigerians. And there is a saying that says that without pain, there won't be gain. And we have seen a president that is very, very courageous in taking on certain policies that have gradually taken us out of that mess that were created by previous administrations. We see a situation in Nigeria, if not we are grateful to God that we have Mr. President as President of Nigeria today. Before he came in, we are having 97% of our revenue going into servicing of loan and also paying subsidy for fuel, even for those who are outside this country, who are our neighboring countries, nations, are benefiting from our subsidy. Today we have seen that the consumption, the petroleum consumption of Nigerians have gradually come down. It's not because that wasn't what we were using, but because most of this subsidy that we're paying was to subsidize for other countries. And Mr. President take that initiative, although before he even came in, there was nothing like subsidy again, because you just have to pronounce that policy that, well, there is no subsidy again, and there is no, because there was no provision even for it in the budget. And when you look at it, 97% to be paying, servicing electricity and subsidy, petroleum subsidy, fuel subsidy, and so on and so forth. So it's becoming too huge, and servicing other loans that you cannot really see the impact of those loans that were collected as being reflected in the lives of Nigerians in terms of infrastructure and so on and so forth. So it was a difficult time. And we are blessed in this country that we have Mr. President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu coming at that particular critical period. It's very, very unfortunate that people might not really understand how. I recall when he came into Lagos too, Lagos was in a mess. I think God just designed him or programmed him for such situations where you just come to solve the challenges that we meet on ground. And that's one of the things that we are facing today. It's quite painful that some of these policies have to be taken by him just to save us. Like the forest, we know what was happening there with Central Bank, where somebody, if the currency rate is 400 with CBN, and the Apukis are having it maybe 750 and whatever, and they give it to 400 to somebody, you can be multi-billionaire within one day, just even if you don't have any money. Somebody can just look at you and say, okay, you want to, let us help you, and before you say Jack Robinson, somebody is paying the money, and you just become billionaire within a day. And that's what was happening with Central Bank. And they're also printing currency. They're printing our money without looking at the value of such money. And that's what, though it wasn't in our party then, the former governor of Edo State, who was saying that, look, Nigerians were in big mess. And that's the reality, that we were in big mess as it were then. And we thank God that we have President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who have been able to take up that challenge and face it. Though it might look so unpopular today, but we have started seeing the results. There's a reflection of what those policies, and Nigerians have started seeing him. If this day can make him the man of the year, you can understand that people have started changing, the narrative is gradually changing. And he has told us in his address that, look, this year, 2025, is going to be a great year for Nigeria. I look up to that, and I'm so confident because that is what he campaigned for, and he has demonstrated that leadership quality that you can look for in any leader across the globe.
The removal of full subsidy meant more federal allocation to state governors, and that was one of the issues raised by the president when he met with them in Lagos a few days ago, emphasizing the critical role state governors have to play in Nigeria's development and prosperity. After all, they get 65% of the federal allocation. What are your thoughts on the emphasis on subnationals driving growth in the new year?
Sincerely speaking, one of the greatest things that Mr. President have done within the last 18 months is that autonomy for the local government. We have seen governors, some of them who have been very, very proactive in dealing with some economic issue within their states. And we have also seen some governors that are just out there to collect the federal allocation. And you will recall that every time there is this federal allocation or local government allocation, you will see that our forex, the exchange, foreign exchange will increase. Why? Because they are taking the money out. And that's the problem that we are facing. And that's why it is expected and that the government at the subnational governments, both at the local government and the state, should start looking forward to develop their states and look inward. They are earning a lot of money that have never been seen in states before now. They are getting it. But we are not seeing that impact like we are seeing at the federal. We are not seeing a corresponding impact of such at the local government. Interestingly,
Mr. President gets all the blames for his policy direction, for the impact on the cost of food and drugs. We are holding governors accountable.
We are not in this country. It's unfortunate because of the mentality that we do have in the past, because everybody runs to the federal. Everything is about federal. Anything that is happening, nobody is taking cognizance of what is happening at their local government. Some does not even know that their local government exists. They don't even know their local government chairman. They don't know their councillors. Some does, even the state government, because there is no impact, that positive impact that they can see, no infrastructural development, no human capacity development. So with that, you see that some have lost interest in governance. Now we are coming back to how democracy needs to be run. And that is why you will see that one of the key things that Mr. President has done in his administration in the last 18 years is to give power back to the people, give power back to the local government. Now, Nigerians must learn to start asking questions from their local government chairman. They must learn to now start asking questions from their state government. When you collect a certain allocation from the federal, what did you use this money for on a monthly basis? It's not that they just take the money and before you know, the money is in some pockets. So, I mean, there must be a collaboration or an understanding of how government should be run. And I will also say, apart from the social media, I think the media should also do something about enlightening people about what governance should be and how to run a government.
I think it was the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum who was talking about how food production has tremendously increased in the past year, but the challenge was that the food commodities were being exported outside the country, and you know, the implication of that now means that there are no enough resources, you know, for the people who are even farming the products. But there are issues of economic indicators and outlook, which Mr. President has been talking about. The fact that he did say that his administration has been able to meet its financial obligations without, you know, resorting to NNPCL, and that we're seeing some improvement in the price of fuel, you know, a strength in Naira and what have you. For Nigerians, I'm wondering how soon you think they can begin to see or feel the impact of this. We've seen so much support from Mr. President, and how much impact could that have on that institution, its independence and its ability to also hold the executive accountable? In the outgone year now, we've seen about 5 or 7 of them moving from their party to the APC.
Sincerely speaking, I think there's this misconception about the legislative arm of government when we talk about the independence of the parliament. There is always this conception that you have to be fighting, you have to be throwing stones and throwing chairs, as it were then. But that is not what they are saying today at the National Assembly. I must give kudos to the leadership of National Assembly for supporting the people. When I said supporting the people, because the people that brought them in is the people that voted them in, and the policies that Mr. President have, or call it the budget, call it any policy or any bill that Mr. President have submitted, is pro-people. So I will be disappointed if peradventure they will have done anything otherwise. So I've seen a more disciplined, focus, and pro-Nigerians in the Senate and at the Parliament, so at the National Assembly as a whole. So for me, I think it's a welcome development. I don't think every time that something is brought up, they must always fight against it, and that is when we have democracy. No, that's not democracy. That's not a parliament. That's not independence. Independence means that, yes, you have the right to say whatever thing you want to say on the floor. You have the right to challenge some policies of government, but do not do it all in the name of being partisan. Like I mentioned earlier, that Mr. President is focusing on governance now. It's not about politics. It's not talking about politics. It's not talking about ethnicity or religion. The man is focusing on how to ensure that we come out of the quagmire that we find ourselves. And so he's not looking at the way some people wanted him to be looking at it. And that's the same thing I'm seeing with the National Assembly.
But holding the executive accountable doesn't necessarily mean that they have to fight. It's just about, you know, creating that that check and that balance for an executive, even though you may have made the right policies and decisions, but the responsibility of the representatives is to tell you how the people feel about it. For instance, you look at I think it's the tax reform bill and also the national anthem bill. There are many Nigerians, perhaps we're not carried along enough before those decisions were made. There are some who are saying, you know what, it's okay. Unlike the 8th Assembly, where we saw a lot of, back and forth between the two arms of government. But it's also important that we pay close attention. Take the 2025 budget, for instance. I don't know if you've seen some in-depth research into the document about the number of, I think it was computers that the MDAs are asking for. It's even higher than the number of computers they wanted to buy last year. And then there are people asking the question, do you buy computers every year? That's kind of scrutiny that I expect from the National Assembly. You don't agree?
Yes, I think I agree with you on that. And that is a very, very important issue. The oversight of legislative arm of government is key to the development of the country. And we must not play down on that role. We must ensure that the legislative arm, the members of the National Assembly or the State Assembly or even the councillors must look at how to do their oversight function perfectly and excellently. And that is what Nigerians are yearning for. For instance, the organization that I am presently in now, the Galaxy Backbone Limited, we have that mandate of the government to be the one to provide such things. But the fact that some of these things are in the budget does not mean it's going to be implemented, and that must be clear. And because even when they bring it, even if by mistake it comes out of the National Assembly and it gets to the presidency or the executive arm of government, it still does not mean, because they're still going to look at this. Budget is an estimation. It's not that they have the money kept somewhere and they just have to plug it and ensure they spend all the money. So what's the budget performance of last year? What's the budget performance of the year before? So it's not always like that.
I think it was 75% last
year. So people always believe that once it's in the budget, that they have to spend it, you know. So it's not depend on the auditors, the Minister of Budget, the Minister of Finance. There is a lot of gateways to cross before you can spend such a fund. So I don't see anybody who's coming up now to say you want to buy a computer or 3 computers that you already have one or you bought some last year. Somebody is going to ask question. And if they don't, and it's going to, then that's corruption. Then somebody is going to be pick for such things. So for me, people just believe that once it's in the budget, it might be in the budget. That's why you see 70% performance, 75% performance of the budget, because there are some certain things that are in the budget that are not being implemented, and that cannot, because they will need to prioritize some of these things before spending on it.
I understand that the implementation usually is a function of whether or not the resources are even available. You know, but also Nigerians are looking forward to a situation where the National Assembly can begin to hold these agencies of government to account and say, you know what, we're not going to approve this spending plan for you because you bought computers last year. And we don't think that you are due for a replacement right now. But the tax reform bills happen to be perhaps one of the most controversial bills before the National Assembly last year. For obvious reasons, you talked about the governor saying they were not duly consulted. You know, they were even at some point asked the executive to withdraw it for more consultation. But are you optimistic that they are going to be able to agree moving forward as we speak?
Well, you see, when the first thing that happened with the tax reform bill was the fact that some people just went to the market and started telling lies about what the original motive behind the bill. So, but now I must give it to the chairman of the tax reform committee that have been going around now telling, and I like what happened with tax reform, because now everybody is now having keen interest on it. We now know that the executive, the president, is looking for means to ensure that he softens the hardship on especially those who are below the rank of saying these ones are.
Mr. President said it's a pro-poor.
It's a pro-poor, yes. I don't want to use that language. It's a pro-poor bill, and which I believe that at the end of the day, everybody will be happy about it. So the areas that is so funny is that some of our governors are too relaxed in terms of getting handouts from the federal government. I think that's one of the things that Lagos, the Mr. President, have done with us in Lagos that make it more independent, even when the then president sees the money of the local government allocations to Lagos people. Lagos was able to stand and see with today, and I think that's one of the things that have changed the narrative of what is going on in Lagos then, and that's why I said with what we are facing today, we just need to be patient with Mr. President. We need to continue to pray for him. We need to continue to support him. At the end of the day, we will all smile. Lagos today is about fourth largest economy in Africa, and I can assure you that Nigeria, we will now, in a few years, before the end of this term, I can assure you that Mr. President will have put Nigeria back to where we belong, and that is why we need to support this tax reform bill. And the National Assembly have said there's going to be a public hearing. There are some things that can be removed. There's some amendment that can be done with the bill, and that's the essence of having a public hearing. That's the essence of having a parliament, because everything cannot be perfect. And like people are pointing to what is in the budget now, the same way some people will want to input or what they call padded some things into the budget, but at the end of the day, there is responsibility. That's the responsibility of the legislative arm of government to look into it and see how best to address some of those challenges. So for me, I think Mr. President have done well by presenting the bill to the National Assembly and asking everybody to have different view through your representative. I don't think anybody that is talking today have one representative or the other at the National Assembly. We should be able to call our representative to come back home and address us about some certain issues
and educate them on,
and educate us on it. But if that is not, we can't blame it on Mr. President. Mr. President cannot be the tomato seller, cannot be the rice producer, cannot be the transport manager and everything. So he has delegated responsibility for some certain people, and even the Constitution have done that for us. So I don't think that is the best way to go, for us to just start attacking any policy that we know is pro-people, that will help Nigerians. Today, our foreign reserve is over $40 billion. So even if the total budget of this year, which is about 32 billion, whatever, or something like that, dollar, even if you can see where Mr. President has built within this 18 months, built our foreign reserve, and also the paying debts without necessarily looking out for an additional. He has said it somewhere before he became the president that, look, all we need to do is just to expand the tax nets rather than and removing some of this burden on SMEs. Multiple taxation on most of the SMEs within the country will help generate more employment for people, will help the businesses to grow, and more money will be in the system. And that's what Mr. President is saying, that look, let us collaborate, let us work together, let us ensure that the people are happy.
Indeed.
They want to put smile on the faces of the people. And he's determined about it. That's what he campaigned about on the Renew Hope agenda. And that is what he's implementing.
We're now looking at a where you take a look at what happened late last year into this year. We heard from Mr. President in quick succession, I think about twice in less than 2 weeks. You saw his media chat, followed by his New Year message. I'm wondering if you think that we waited too long to hear from him, because that's like waiting for like 18 months thereabout, even though he had addressed the nation a couple of times. But, you know, the media chat gave some depth to hearing the president's mind, his convictions and his determination as regards some of the decisions he's made. Do you think he should have that more often? And what impact do you think it will have on the perception of his economic policies and decisions?
I think he needs to have more of such. And I know it was a strategy that he didn't do that earlier, because you need to tell people what you have done before. You can't just come, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. People will start saying, you are going to do this, you are going to do this, and we are not seeing it's happening yet. Come and do, and like some people are still asking today, come and do this for us, come and do that for us. But he waited. It was a strategy, and I think that strategy works perfectly. And I believe that now that he has started, he will not stop doing it. At least we want to hear our president, if not quarterly, at least biannually, so that he can easily discuss his policies, his interjections, and his futuristic plan on some of the key areas that he has campaigned for with. And I think that's just the strategy I believe that is used. Let him do something before coming out. Now he has come out, I started the media chat. I want him to continue so that people will get, you will see the impact of that media chat. A lot of Nigerians started seeing reason with him. They started knowing that, yeah, okay, he said this when he was campaigning, because there's so many narrations, so many things on the social media, especially so many lies, false propaganda coming up from left and right, and the man just allowed them to fly, because one day when the truth comes in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
you talked about the 2025 budget earlier. Quite ambitious, the indices and the expectation of Mr. President. The reduction of inflation, for instance, from 34.6% to 15% is what many have said is not realistic. What are your thoughts in this regard?
There are so many things they've said is not realistic that is realistic today, especially with the fuel, with refineries. Even a former president said he can never work. Today he's working, and they asked him to come and visit it. He said it's an insult, unfortunately. But those are the things that we are saying. We must believe in this country. We must be patriotic. Why is it that everybody is just looking for bad news for the country? We must always, and when the good news comes up, they keep quiet. Nobody wants to say anything about it. And that's just the unfortunate aspect of it. You mentioned the issue of
the reduction in inflation rate to 15%.
To 15%. I believe that it's doable. And that is one reason that the tax reform bill become a law. When that happens, I believe that a lot of investors are coming in. We have seen the Brazil coming in after the visit of Mr. President into the country, injecting some sort of fund to the country, the livestock industry, in the agriculture. You will see that that area is going to boom, and within a short period, more people. So those are the things that will reduce inflation. And you have also seen that
hoping that we get the issue of security right,
because that's where I'm going. So you can also see that even in the area of security, in the Northeast today, it's like a foregone issue. It's coming to an end. Northwest, no doubt, within a short period. And we have seen the military, they've done so well. The security apparatus of this country have done so well about addressing the issue of insecurity. It's just in the Southeast and Northwest now that we are seeing flashes of insecurity. And I believe, and some also in the Northwest, especially in Benue. So I believe that before, in the next 6 months, we are going to see a lot of development. And this is a president that is bringing in digital infrastructure into the system, and with ICT, that's one of the things that he did in Lagos when he brought in Oracle, and at the end of the day, a lot of ghost workers disappeared on the payroll, and were able to even bring in more people into the system. A lot of things are also going on at the federal level now, and which Galaxy Backbone is also one of the key organizations that are working on some of these digital transformation within the country. Once that is fully implemented, I can assure you that the inflation rate will be 15% as projected by Mr. President.
You spoke about patriotism earlier and the need for Nigerians to believe in this government. Mr. President announced the plan to unveil the National Values Charter and launch a national orientation program. I'm wondering what you think government has to do differently in this regard. I've heard too many times people ask whether the NOA is doing enough. We saw some debates last year amongst Nigerian universities, perhaps very novel. It's the first of the kind, at least for the first time we're hearing about NOA and young Nigerians also discussing their dreams and their visions for the nation. But what bridge do you think, what gap do you think governments must begin to, bridge to be able to get more Nigerians on board to support it?
Sincerely speaking, let me use this opportunity to appreciate the leadership of NOA, the current leadership of Alhaji Isa Onilu, for what he's doing at Nigerian Orientation Agency. It's like a forgone agency in the past. We have seen a great transformation from what it were to what it is today. And a lot of, if you open your TV stations, your station here in TVC, we have seen a lot of things coming from National Orientation Agency addressing and educating the Nigerians. And people are getting to change their mentality about some certain areas of government. And I think they need to be more equipped, and they should be well funded in terms of, and like you said, you see young Nigerians, young university students coming up to participate in national orientation, and that's where it should be. Nigerian national NYSC should also be to collaborate fully. I'm calling on the Minister of Youth. Now we have a vibrant young man there, and I think he should now collaborate more with National Youth, National Orientation Agency to ensure that even when you go on service, you will be well educated about Nigeria, and you also get infused with development within the country, and so that people can start projecting our country the way it should. And that's one thing that Mr. President has been doing perfectly, going around. And you can't see any government worldwide that will sit at home and you think you can have that kind of relationship with other nations. And that is building bridges across the globe. And that is what, the other day I saw him with the American president. He was in UK, he was in France. I mean, and all these things are yielding fruit for us in this country. I think we must appreciate the fact that we now have a president that is addressing issues, though we have massive challenges on ground that he met on ground, but he's addressing them gradually. So we need to be patient with him. We need to continue to support him. We need to continue to pray for him as a country. We also have a role to play as a patriotic Nigerians, that when you see that something is wrong, don't encourage it. Even with us, you see Nigerians that are supposed to kill no longer. If you see Nigerians that are doing some wrong things, don't let us keep quiet. When you see something, speak out and let us know how to correct such things.
We have to go now. If you're a prophet Elinio, yes. What would you say to Nigeria? So where do you see us by the end of this year economically?
Well, as a prophet, I would say that Nigeria, not just about being a prophet, but I would see in Nigeria that every Nigerian will be proud to say, I am from Nigeria. As we call ourselves the giant of Africa. I want to see that giant of Africa in every sector of our country, and I also want to say that every Nigerian should now stand up and support this government and pray for this government and be patriotic enough to speak out where necessary, and don't let us just continue to breed false informations and circulating it all around. Please, let us cooperate with this government. Let us pray for our country to be great again. And we now have somebody who is listening. We have somebody who is a leader by any ramification you want to look at. And we have somebody who has focus, who is patriotic enough to develop our country.
Thank you so much for your contribution. We are really counting on that. Nigerians are looking forward to a lot of changes
prosperous Nigeria,
and the fruits and the benefits of all of government policies. Honorable Segun Olulade is Executive Director, Customer Centricity and Marketing. He's also a former
Galaxy Backbone.
Yes, Galaxy Backbone Limited. He's also a former member of the Lagos State House of Assembly. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And Happy New Year to you.
Wish you the same.
That's our show today, everyone. Thanks for being a part of it. We're back tomorrow.